How's it going, everybody? So in this video, we're going to discuss why you probably don't need to be carnivore unless you have very specific reasons to do so. So I'm sure a lot of people who are subscribed to my channel probably started subscribing to me around the time that I did my carnivore experiment and I started making a bunch of videos about ketogenic diets and how to do them properly, and all of the pretty bad misinformation that was being spread around in the carnivore and keto community, and just sharing all of my knowledge and information that I gathered while obsessing over ketogenic metabolism and the ins and outs of the carnivore diet. So a lot of y'all who are watching this video are probably on a carnivore diet. So for those who don't know and weren't with me during that time, I was on a carnivore diet for about 2 years, relatively strictly. And during that time, I ate zero carbs at all. And then I started experimenting with adding different fruits and vegetables, mostly vegetables at first. I was still trying to stay ketotic. And then adding fruits and trying white rice, and there was like a month where I tried the repeat diet and it was pretty bad. And now these days I'm pretty lenient, and I just understand that as long as I have enough red meat in my diet, I probably not going to be suffering from any nutrient deficiencies. And a lot of these people who think that they are suffering from nutrient deficiencies are generally overcomplicating their issues. Not always, but many times. So, especially Frank Tufano, but don't get me started on that one. All right, so yeah, I'm not coming at this from carnivore diet is bad. Absolutely not. But I'm also not coming at this from carnivore diet is like magic, okay? So, at a baseline, okay, we have to start with what is your intended purpose for following any type of nutritional strategy whatsoever, okay? What is your goal? If your goal is fat loss, okay, emphasis on fat loss, not weight loss, fat loss, okay? I do feel as a trainer and a strength and conditioning coach for almost a decade now, there's a huge difference between just, well, obviously, like in strength and conditioning, because you can cut 20 pounds of water weight in 1 week, and it's like, that doesn't really tell you much about how much fat you've lost. So anyway, if your goal is fat loss, right, there are so many different ways of losing body fat. Going carnivore is not magic in that regard. The main thing you need to do if you're trying to lose body fat is focus your diet on protein. Aim for 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight. So whatever your ideal body weight target goal is, eat that many grams of protein, preferably from animal sources, okay? That's something I got from carnivore. From animal sources, that's where I believe you'll get the majority of your nutrition from. Preferably red meat is generally what I say, right? After that, make sure you're in some form of caloric deficit, okay? And generally speaking, as long as people are, like, if your goal is fat loss, you keep the meats lean, okay? And you don't add any added fats, and keep your carbohydrates to a moderate proportion. Preferably target your carbs around workouts and do not eat them on off days. And if you do that, you will definitely lose body fat, and you'll achieve amazing results without needing to be OCD about calories, okay? And you can, generally, my protocol that is very easy to sustain and my clients have no problem following is literally eat nothing but red meat and berries, or fruits, right? Have no added fats, and if you do, add butter, and then keep the meats lean. And that is literally what you're going to be doing anyway if you start to cut calories, right? And that's pretty damn carnivore as it is. It's just that we're not being dogmatic, right? So that's like the fat, like, do you need to be carnivore to lose body fat? No, you really don't. It is literally calories in versus calories out. Okay? So what about type 2 diabetes? Okay? So type 2 diabetes, in my opinion, responds best to a protein-centric, calorie-restricted, carbohydrate-controlled protocol. Literally the same protocol that I just laid out for fat loss is going to definitely put your type 2 diabetes into remission. The only thing that I would change would be the kind of like freedom of carbohydrate intake. Instead of just saying, hey, eat fruit and meat, right? I would say keep your net carbs under 50 grams per day. And whatever carbs you eat, make sure that they are coming from low glycemic load, not glycemic index, low glycemic load carbohydrates. And as long as you do that, and your net carbs are under 50 grams, and you're mostly eating protein, you should be fine. And I would even say that in a type 2 diabetes situation, you could easily exchange grams of fat. You could easily exchange eating, obviously fattier cuts of meat for just the carbohydrate intake in general. But that's like requires a lot of nuance in a specific video to talk about. It is true that you can restore insulin sensitivity simply by depriving your body of caloric energy. That is true. However, carbohydrate metabolism is what's really going on in the symptomology as well as the pathology. So I think there needs to be a degree of carbohydrate control, being carbohydrate controlled. But you don't need to be carnivore. There's a lot of different ways that you can do type 2 diabetes in that regard. Okay. And right now I'm getting down on the practical, but like the big dogma is that carnivore people think that plants are poison. I've heard like Sverige say that garlic is a neurotoxin, and that's just ridiculous. I definitely think plants are medicine, absolutely, or they can be used as medicine. I mean, if you look at traditional Chinese medicine and how they molded an entire medical system around using food to treat illnesses, they combined everything from organs like deer antlers, testicles, to bugs and like insects, right? Like I'm literally drinking a black ant and deer antler tonic right now. Okay, that came out of Chinese medicine. But they also use different plants, like, obviously roots like ginseng root, ginger root, and ginkgo biloba leaf. And they use these things, and they've been seen as longevity tonics. And there's all these like stories and legends and documentation of people living way, way longer than the average population, and they are crediting it to certain longevity tonics that are plant origins. So anyway, and then of course we have so much scientific evidence backing up the significant benefits of these polyphenols and these things in these specific plant medicines, though, like ginseng, for example. Are there possible side effects? Sure, right? And I think that's where the carnivore diet is, these experts like Paul Saladino are good because they're shining wisdom on, like, bro, like, okay, think about it. There's a huge difference between consuming ginseng leaves even, compared to eating a pound of broccoli a day because you think you're going to live longer. Eating a pound of broccoli a day is not going to give you anything magical except for magical toots. Okay, you're going to fart a lot. Literally, there's nothing special about broccoli. And that's a huge paradigm shift for me, is I no longer waste my money on spinach leaves and kale and power greens and crap like that. I no longer spend my money on broccoli unless I'm just like, I feel like eating broccoli, right? Or if I feel good eating it. I'm not going to come on camera and be like, hey man, in your diet, to be healthy, you need to like eat broccoli and eat greens, chlorophyll, whatever else indole 3 carbinol, stuff like that, you know, the indole compounds of broccoli. You're not going to hear me coming on camera and talking about crap that's not going to make a huge impact on your health. But you will hear me talking about, bro, like, there are certain, like, if you're sick, definitely chop up some raw garlic, let it sit for 10 minutes, and eat it every 3 hours, and it'll heal your respiratory infections, right? Anyway, so, yeah, and obviously, don't even get me started on the fact that we have correlation data, which doesn't prove causation, but showing that the longest living people in the population do happen to eat the most plant foods. And again, that is healthy user bias. It doesn't mean that the plant foods are causing it, but it also means if fucking plant foods were killing people, like these carnivore people are trying to infer, then these people would not have the higher life expectancy like we're talking about, the better health outcomes. So anyway, we just talked about all of the conditions and goals that you don't need to be carnivore for. And there's others too, obviously. But now let's talk about the reasons why carnivore can help, okay? So I've consulted with a lot of clients who have had food intolerances, chronic digestive illness that are triggered by plant foods, and histamine intolerances, okay? Now, histamine intolerances are not really a plant food versus carnivore food type of thing. Histamine intolerances, there's a lot of animal foods. For example, sardines, meat that's been kind of like sitting out for a long time, like frozen fish, aged cheese. And these are animal foods that can develop histamines. And people that have histamine intolerance generally have other food intolerances as well. So going carnivore is literally the ultimate elimination diet. And it removes a lot of trial and error that I personally had to go through for years to heal my own chronic digestive problems and psoriasis and autoimmune problems. It eliminates a lot of trial and error. And it's a lot easier to just remove all the foods that could possibly cause problems and then kind of slowly reintroduce them over time, keeping a food diary and writing down notes or recording videos about your experiences with each one. A big problem that people have is they don't keep a food journal, so they waste a lot of time. Anyway, so if you have autoimmune illness, if you have digestive illness, if you have intolerance, suspected intolerances to different foods, or chronic allergic reactions or arthritis, and you're like, man, I've tried everything, I don't know what's going on. Going carnivore a lot of times is a complete life changer. But if you're like, oh man, these carnivore people, man, like they have, they have a point. Like fucking plants don't want to be eaten. Plants don't have claws, so they create these compounds that kill off the people that eat them. And it's like actually, a lot of these compounds that they develop as defense mechanisms do create hormetic reactions. For example, Rhodiola rosea, specifically a Tibetan variety, grows up in super high elevations in the mountains, and it develops polyphenols that protect it from the harsh environment. And when humans consume it, that polyphenol responsible for protecting the plant from the harsh environment actually creates a hormetic response in humans that helps to protect the humans from environmental stressors as well. So this idea that plant chemicals make humans stronger, it is an accurate statement, but it depends on the chemical in the plant in question. But again, if you're suffering from autoimmune illness and you're over there thinking a plant-based diet is going to help you, well, that is, you're forcing these plants down your throat. And it's very common. Here's what I see is people be like, well, it hasn't resolved my issues completely, but it has helped a little bit. So that's, it's valuable. And to me, I'm like, well, I thought the same thing when I was vegan for a year. And then I went autoimmune paleo, and I just ate meat, raw greens, and fruits, and cooked cruciferous. And all of my symptoms went away. So it's like, well, when I was vegan, like, it was kind of helping, I think. It's like, well, bro, you go freaking carnivore, and you just kill all possible triggers to your problem. And it's like, well, now my symptoms are completely gone, right? Okay, but carnivore is not like some kind of magic is what I'm trying to get across, okay? For some people, like, it will work like magic if you have a problem that is triggered by plant foods. If you have a health issue that is like literally dependent upon the foods that you're eating triggering that problem, carnivore is absolutely a lifesaver. But it's not because you're removing all plants. It's not that plants are poisonous. It's not that meat is magic. And, ketogenesis, though, is kind of magic in a way. But, mind you, I'm not on a ketogenic diet right now. But the reason why it seems like magic is because there were specific plant foods that you were consuming that were triggering your symptoms. And removing those foods removed the trigger. Now, the underlying cause of your food intolerance is something different, right? So it's like, it's not necessarily that these foods you're intolerant to are the cause of your problems. Maybe it is, right? Like, there's these ideas in paleo land where people on the paleo communities are like, well, these beans have these saponins, or they have these fibers that, like, destroy the gut lining, and then they create autoimmunity, because then it allows undigested proteins to seep through into the bloodstream and causes an immune response, which is autoimmunity attacking, And it's like, well, that might be the case, but maybe there's a deeper cause. Like, for example, my symptoms, like, literally started, number one, I started trying to be healthier, so I added a lot more whole grains. I went from eating maybe a can of beans and a bean and cheese taco like once every couple weeks, to all of a sudden eating, cans of beans over and over again every single day, trying to be plant-based and Mediterranean. So that could be the issue, is I just try to add it too much too soon. The other thing is I had a round of antibiotics. So a lot of people, they wipe out their gut bacteria with antibiotics, and then they're like, wow, why am I having all these problems? It's like, well, we really don't know what the fuck, like, really happens after you do antibiotics. But that could be an underlying, like, real cause, right? That caused your body to not be able to tolerate these foods. And now when you eat those foods, the food intolerance triggers those symptoms, right? Everything from fibromyalgia to lupus, Crohn's disease, rheumatoid arthritis, even Hashimoto's thyroiditis. I mean, it's a crazy list. So I like to kind of promote the carnivore diet, mostly because, like, I'll wear shirts and stuff when I'm in public. I mean, I do eat mostly carnivore, don't get me wrong. Like, I literally eat meat, liver, raw eggs all the time, and then some fruits, kind of. And then if I'm trying to gain weight really fast for, like, a competition to compete in a higher weight class, I'll do, like, jasmine rice, like white rice. And I do a lot of tonic herbs. But the main thing is there's a lot of people out there that have never heard of it, or they think it's complete bullshit, and they're suffering from an illness that could be resolved if they went on carnivore. So that's why I kind of try to spread the word. But at the same time, I don't want to be seen as this guy who, people think is like, oh, this, like, fucking meat guy. It's like, it's important for people to know that plants are not killing you, and that's not why it works, right? I like for people to know what's really happening. Like, I want people to know the truth and not get, people tend to get crazy. Like, they get extreme no matter where you go. So anyway, I got my next client in like 2 minutes. He's probably on his way, probably here already. So yeah, there you go.